Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. So I'm a little bit the alien here in the room because I'm not from the energy sector, so to speak. So I'm an industry analyst, and our focus, or the main focus of our company is around digital transformation, around information security, around also things like blockchain and AI and other stuff. So what I want to do is starting this from a digital transformation angle, and in the first talk, it came up that people sometimes say, oh, this is not really the thing which is relevant to energy. I've heard this from virtually every industry so far. And the fact is, digital transformation is relevant to every single industry. It's here for a long time, it's here to stay, and it will affect and has affected a lot of sectors. Look at bookstores. They are digitally transformed for quite a while right now in many areas. So I want to look a little at what it is, and what it means to the energy sector and transmission system operators from my sort of outside perspective. So I come, by the way, from a company which is probably closer to 0% in smart metering than to 100%. I'm from Germany. And I always remember the story my colleague has told me a while ago, where he said, oh, I have a smart meter, and then someone from my DSO comes in with his iPhone and reads the data from the smart meter. So we are probably somewhat digitally retarded in that area, at least in Germany. So I have probably a totally different perspective than people in Estonia might have on that topic. So let's look at digital transformation. And a while ago I created this picture which I call the circles of change. And this is more from an industry perspective, but if you replace smart manufacturing by smart everything, so smart grids, smart cities, whatever, then it fits perfectly well also to the energy sector. So what we really have in this digital transformation, if we start at the inner circles, is we have a lot of external drivers. We have the changes in regulations. Sometimes the regulations lead, sometimes the regulations trail. We have, as a consequence of all the things happening, dynamic partnerships. So I think this is very important for the energy industry. If I look at various countries, and the speaker before me also brought it up, so there are different models, but there's a lot of change in the way different parties interact with each other. We have the changing competitive landscape, up to prosumers which produce energy. We have the rapid innovation. We have what I call product to service transition, maybe not that relevant here, but if you look at automotive vendors where renting a car when you need it, so changes the model from I sell a car to I provide a service. Everything is connected and so on, and clearly we also have this ever-increasing attack. So the more we connect, the more we are under attack. And I think there's a very simple rule of thumb. Once you're connected, you're under attack. Always assume that everything and every device and every system you connect, once it's connected to the internet directly or indirectly, it is under attack. So we need to understand this in this context as well. That needs various organizational capabilities. So organizations need to become more agile, more innovative, and more flexible, which is a big challenge in industries which have sort of acted the same way for a pretty long time. So I'm from Stuttgart, where we have some automotive vendors, and I think it's very clear or very, very obvious to see that automotive vendors also are heavyweights, and change is always a challenge in established organizations. So what do we need to do? We need to look at know your customer. So the interaction with the customer is a totally different play in the world of prosumers. We have to look at the Internet of Things, all this connected stuff. In a few weeks from now, I will connect my new car, which will be a plug-in hybrid car, then to the energy network, which then also will be a connected thing. And we have to look at all the smart things, the smart cities, the smart grids, or in the industry, the smart manufacturing. To do so, we need a variety of technologies, which include things like big data, and the way to exchange data. Identity, so we need to know our customer. Security, privacy, how do we deal with this data? And I think that would be a very interesting topic as well, but too big for that keynote. The intersection between GDPR and all we are talking about in this today, a very hot topic. We have published a lot of research around GDPR. Blockchain, I'll touch it in a minute, robotics, sensors, etc. So when I look at, and I have to look at the clock already, when I look at what it means for TSOs, I try to split this into three areas: innovation-driven, market-driven, technology-driven. So innovation-driven is we have this far more dynamic use and production of power prosumers and their impact on networks and peak loads, also renewable energy, and then all the smart cities with smart, but also sometimes more autonomous grids. I'll touch it again in a minute. And the need to access data. So in all this context, we need to access data. Then market-driven, prosumers also have an impact on energy trading. If they have really smart approaches, they will load their vehicle when power is cheapest in future. So we will clearly see some balance between consumption. You can use your vehicle as a temporary store for your power. We will have market-driven. When I look at Germany, for instance, the smart meter gateway services, a regulatory aspect, and other things which affect the business of the DSOs, and where DSOs, on the other hand, need then integrators. They need to integrate with others. They need to exchange data. They need the services. And technology-driven, we have all this around what can we do with data, what do we need to do with data. I should have brought in a side of data exchange. I should have brought in the term API. API, from a technical perspective, a very common term for application programming interface. And in fact, it's all about opening up APIs you can use and doing it ideally in a way which is somewhat interoperable. Blockchains will come in some areas. I'll touch it. All this also enables the creation of new services, and there's the demand for new services. If I'm a consumer or a prosumer, I want to have the services. I can manage my own world without losing my data, without losing my privacy. So security, privacy also are very important things. And clearly the prosumer thing also comes in. So prosumers right now sometimes produce. So if they're real prosumers, they produce whenever the sun is shining or whatever else. They consume power and they store power. And your vehicle, you might need it, 3 hours per day for driving. The remaining time you can store or sort of give back power depending on the market price, for instance, or with other devices you have. So you can feed when power is expensive. You can procure when power is cheap. And we will see changes in that world. And that also, again, needs access to data, access to APIs, more smart, more intelligent devices. From my, as I've said, I'm more the outsider, maybe naive perspective, but that's what I see here. When I researched this area, I came upon the Nice, so not the Nice, maybe it's also Nice grid, but it's the Nice grid, so the town in France, which I think nicely demonstrates the way towards also autonomous grids. So the term they used was islanding, which allows to get some more autonomy, which requires them to have a very close interaction of the various devices and producers and consumers there. So again, it's very much about data exchange within that island and beyond that island with the players which then have to come in when the island doesn't work well for itself. But obviously all these evolutions change the play for TSOs. On the one hand, we have this big backbone thing between wind in Denmark and power needed somewhere, whatever in the south of Germany. On the other hand, we have the tendency towards more autonomous islands, and both will happen, and both needs to be managed, and we need to get the players together and to enable exchange of data. That's the digital transformation we see here. So it's the prosumers, the renewable energy, the decentralized storage, the smart metering, the energy management, all this depends on data, all this depends on open APIs, on the various players being able to interact with each other. One thing I came up, which I found particularly interesting is, and when I go back to I think the final slide of the speaker before me, about the various models how data is managed, then there was this model that decentralized, driven by DSOs, which is basically the model in Germany theoretically. Practically, we have so many DSOs that most of the DSOs aren't able to create that service infrastructure on their own behalf. So they need someone. They might cooperate, or, and that's more likely, the TSO steps in. So the TSO might end up in a role where he's more the service provider, which enables the cooperation between the DSOs. And I think one important, highly important thing we shouldn't underestimate in that context is, in the digital transformation, one of the very most important things to look at is who provides or who is the face to the customer or consumer. Because this is what massively decides about your success or failure. So if someone else becomes the face to the customer, then you're only the service provider. The closer you are to the customer, the better is your position in the entire value chain. And there's a huge opportunity for TSOs to get closer to the customer, because DSOs might need the business. Don't miss that opportunity if you're in the sort of right country for that. That clearly is a little bit a country thing. So to come to my two final slides, one other thing we will observe is the impact of blockchain. So blockchain clearly is one of the buzzwords of the last couple of years. But there's also a lot of reality behind it. We see more and more real-world use cases aside of the very problematic digital currency area. So we see more things. The interesting thing with blockchain, so if you haven't looked that much, and they are sort of a distributed ledger. And what they allow you is to manage data distributed by different parties. And data is held in a sequence. It can be time-stamped, and it's pretty tamper-proof. So I'm very careful with the term tamper-proof, because there's no 100% security. So for building infrastructures where you need to share data, where you need to have data which is in a sequence over time, blockchains might help. They will not solve everything, absolutely not. They are hard to use when it comes to masses of transactions in a very short period of time. But it's an interesting option you should look at. So without going too much into detail and within the limited time, these were some of the things I see around the digital transformation. What I definitely see is data and the ability to access data, to do it in a secure way with privacy in mind, is a key element. But it's also very important to understand how business models are changing, what the opportunities are. And I hope I brought up some of the ideas I have from my perspective, also from the perspective of someone who's very familiar with digital transformation. My advice is, with all that change, and change always leads to, oh, what does it mean for me? And it also leads to fear and other things. But don't look at the challenges first. Look at the opportunities. There are plenty of opportunities to create a new role, to become a new and very prominent and important role in that business. But what is clear to me is the TSO role will never be the same again. So you have to accept there's the digital transformation and act upon this. Thank you.